Asterisk, asterisk intro, you could hear it before you even opened the door. The screech of plastic wheels on the pavement, the buzz of CFAX on the telly, and the clink of milk bottles at dawn. None of it's here anymore. But if you grew up in Britain in the 80s, every one of these sounds and sights is etched into your bones. We've dug up 20 things we truly miss from that wild, colorful, unforgettable decade. Warning, some of them might hit you right in the nostalgia ZX Spectrum. Before PlayStations, there was the ZX Spectrum, a rubber-keyed marvel that turned British living rooms into pixelated battlegrounds. Released in 1982 by Sinclair Research, it wasn't just a computer, it was a rite of passage. Kids learned to code, loaded games from cassette tapes, and typed commands like load while praying it wouldn't crash halfway through. It sold over 5 million units and introduced a whole generation to games like Manic Miner and Jet Set Willy. It was noisy, painfully slow, and gloriously fiddly, but nobody cared. For the first time, it felt like the future had arrived. Even if that future came with loading screens that took 10 minutes, soda streaming the kitchens of 80s Britain, having a soda stream was practically a badge of honor. With a satisfying hiss, it transformed boring tap water into fizzy magic. Kids loved mixing their own cola or orange flavors, usually far too strong, while parents hoped it would save money on canned drinks. It wasn't just a gadget, it was like a mini science lab on the kitchen counter. Get busy with the fizzy wasn't just a slogan, it was a challenge. Door-to-door on weekends, many British kids became little lions, doing a paper round, up before 6 a.m., rain or shine. To deliver newspapers door-to-door, it was both a responsibility and a way to earn some pocket money. It taught discipline, grit, and the true value of a crisp £5 note. Back then, news wasn't digital, and every street had someone cycling along with a heavy canvas bag. For many, it was their very first job. And even today, the quiet streets at dawn seem to echo with the sound of rattling letterboxes. Knight Rider win. Michael Knight hit British screens in the mid-80s. Everything changed. Knight Rider wasn't just another imported show. It was must-watch television. Kit, the talking car, became an instant icon. Every kid wanted one, and every commercial break felt like torture. Aired on ITV, it blended action, tech, and slick American cool in a way nothing else on TV did at the time. Friday nights felt electric, and the playgrounds buzzed for days with talk about the latest episode. If you could bring back just one show from the 80s, would it be this one? Ice cream, the unforgettable mini milk ice creams were a staple of British childhood in the 80s. For just a few pence, you got a creamy, milky treat that somehow felt both simple and perfect. No chocolate coating, no gimmicks, just frozen nostalgia on a stick. They came in strawberry, vanilla, and chocolate, and they melted faster than you could eat them. Every corner shop freezer had them. And somehow, every summer memory seemed to include one. Sony Walkman before Spotify and Bluetooth. The Sony Walkman was the height of cool in 80s Britain. It gave you the power to carry music in your pocket. With chunky headphones and that satisfying click of the cassette door, suddenly the world had a soundtrack, and it was yours. Tapes wore out, batteries drained quickly, and you'd use a pencil to rewind the cassette, but none of that mattered. Wearing a Walkman felt like freedom, even if your tape only had 9 songs. In the 80s, nearly every British kid dreamed of having one. Supermarkets every neighborhood had a greengrocer, often run by the same family for decades. Before the rise of supermarkets, this was where you got your apples weighed on metal scales, your spuds in paper bags, and a smile along with your change. They knew your name, your mom's usual order, and even the exact kind of tomatoes she liked. It wasn't just shopping, it was part of the community. One of those everyday rituals that quietly disappeared over time. Cartoons, there was no streaming, no pause button, and no second chances. If you missed Saturday morning cartoons, you missed them. British kids in the 80s would wake up early, bowl of cereal in hand, to catch shows like The Raccoons, Dungeons and Dragons, and He-Man. For a few sacred hours, the television belonged entirely to the kids. It felt like a weekly holiday, full of bright colors, over-the-top intros, and characters that lived rent-free in your imagination all week long. Long before the internet, even CFAX couldn't compete. Milk bottles, you could hear the familiar clink of glass milk bottles as the milkman made his rounds, leaving them on the doorstep before sunrise with silver, red, or gold foil tops. They were a comforting start to the day. It wasn't just about milk, it was part of the rhythm of life. Even the birds knew when to peck through the foil, and returning the empties felt like a small, satisfying ritual that somehow kept the world in order. Jingles. British telly in the 80s wasn't just about the shows, it was also the adverts that stuck with you. Catchy jingles from brands like Bird's Eye, Milky Way, or Rally Bikes became part of the national soundtrack. Some were so memorable you'd find yourself singing them at school without even realizing. They were short, bold, and weirdly brilliant, and you can probably still hum a few today, even if you haven't heard them in decades. Which jingle from the 80s is still stuck in your head? Smash hits in 80s Britain. No magazine captured pop culture quite like Smash Hits, packed with glossy posters, cheeky interviews, and full song lyrics. It was a must-have for every teen. It didn't just report on pop stars, it made them larger than life. From Boy George to Wham, it gave fans a voice and a sense of connection. Reading Smash Hits felt like being part of a secret club, where sarcasm and silliness were just as important as the music itself. Rumble. Before electronic superstores took over, there was Rumble in 80s Britain, the place to rent or buy TVs, VCRs, and washing machines. If your teller broke, chances are you got your replacement from there, delivered and installed by someone who probably knew your postcode by heart. It wasn't glamorous, but it was dependable, a solid part of the high street that quietly vanished in the 90s, taking a little piece of everyday life with it. Radio 1 Roadshow in 80s Britain. The Radio 1 Roadshow turned seaside town into live music hotspots with DJs like Simon Mayo and Steve Wright. It brought the energy of national radio straight to the beach, complete with giveaways, live bands, and crowds singing along in the sun. It wasn't just a broadcast, it was an event. Families would plan their holidays around it, and for many kids, it was their very first live music experience. The Roadshow made radio feel alive, local, and gloriously loud. British lunches in the 80s could be hit or miss, but the puddings were legendary. From jam roly-poly with custard, to cornflake tart, to chocolate sponge with that mysterious pink sauce, these desserts were sweet, heavy, and unforgettable. They weren't gourmet, but they were pure comfort. Everyone had a favorite, and even decades later, just hearing the names brings back memories of mica tables, plastic trays, and that unmistakable smell of the school canteen. Woolworths, Woolies, as everyone called it, was the beating heart of the British high street. In the 80s, you could pick unmixed sweets, cassette singles, toys, school supplies, and even socks, all under one roof. No trip to town felt complete without popping in. It wasn't just a shop, it was a ritual. The smell of the pick-in mixed aisle alone is burned into memory. And when Woolworths finally closed, it felt like the end of an era no one was ready for. Video shop. Before streaming and digital downloads, a trip to the video shop was a highlight of the weekend. Places like Blockbuster or your local independent shop let you wander the aisles, judge films by their covers, and argue with your siblings over what to rent. New releases usually had a waiting list, and the horror section always felt off-limits and thrilling. You'd rewind the tape, drop it back through the return slot, and do it all again the next Friday. It wasn't just about the movie, it was the whole ritual. And no algorithm has ever replaced that feeling. What film did you rent over and over, even when you already knew every line? Tiswas and Swap Shop before YouTube and on-demand content. Tiswas and multicolored Swap Shop ruled Saturday morning TV in Britain. One was pure chaos, custard pies, water, and slapstick mayhem, while the other was more wholesome, letting kids call in to trade toys and chat with their favorite stars. They weren't just shows. They were live, unpredictable experiences where you never knew what might happen next. And that's what made them magical. For many, they were the heartbeat of childhood weekends in 80s Britain. Public information films. Few things were as oddly terrifying as the public information films of the 80s, aimed at kids and adults alike. These short clips warned about dangers like playing near water, crossing the road, or talking to strangers, often with eerie music and stark, serious narration. They stayed with you for life, Charlie says. The Green Cross Code Man and that haunting film about electrical substations weren't just educational. They were burned into your memory forever. Closing, maybe it's the sounds, the smells, or the colors, but some memories from 80s Britain never really leave you. These weren't just things. They were part of how we grew up, laughed, learned, and connected with the world around us. Which one of these hit you the hardest? Or is there something we missed that still lives rent-free in your memory? Tell us in the comments. We'd love to hear your stories. And if this little trip back in time made you smile, leave a like and share to help more people rediscover the magic. Because sometimes the past isn't really gone.